Alright, hello and welcome back to another deck profile. And today we're taking a look at something a little bit early. And by a little bit early, I mean a lot of early, because we're not going to get this for a little bit. But I couldn't help myself. It's a variant of zombies, so we all know that at some point I'm going to have to take a stab at this deck. And I literally did like the second that it was out and coded, right? I've been working on this from. So I've put a decent amount of time into it, and this is what I have come up with for the new vampire support. I don't believe it's perfect, and I still think there's some stuff to work out, but I think I'm getting it up to a higher level, and it just needs some few changes here and there. So I'm going to go ahead and show this off here and maybe get some updates later on. But anyway, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Now we're starting off with a card that isn't new. We have Shadow Vampire. Now when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one dark vampire monster from your hand or deck, except Shadow Vampire, but if you do, only that monster can attack for the rest of this turn. This card cannot be used as an XYZ material for an XYZ summon, except for the XYZ summon of a dark monster, which is fine because Adrius and Crimson Knight Vampire Braum are two very good rank 5s. You know, Adrius just outs anything, so it's really not a hindrance, him only being able to go into darks. The attack restriction does suck, but we can still attack with one of them, and with the combination of the next two cards, this card can get very crazy. So the thing that you'll almost always want to be special summoning off of him is Vampire Scarlet. Now, if this card is normal or special summoned, that's the key point right there. You can pay 1,000 life points, then target one vampire monster in your graveyard except itself, special summon it, but it cannot attack this turn, and that is a once per turn. And then it shares the same effect that all the new vampires do, that is, at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed a monster or monsters by battle, you can special summon as many of those monsters as possible from the graveyard to your field. So, if you go ahead, and it's very easy to set up your grave in this deck through the use of the new small guys, the discard, Unizombie, the new Foolish spell. There's a lot of ways to do it. So the ideal play is to go ahead and Shadow Vampire into Scarlet, and then use him to go into either of these two over here generally, or just whichever vampire you have in your grave. Could be one of the small guys to use for a link play as well. So that addresses kind of one of the problems with Shadow Vampire. But the other problem is that only that monster can attack, so you can't like go into something bigger and then start outing your opponent's board. But that problem is fixed, and this actually fixes the problem for almost every vampire in the deck, is Vampire Fraulein. Now, when a monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. And that is a hard once per turn, but it doesn't matter what's attacking, doesn't matter who's attacking, you can just go ahead and special summon this card. Once per battle, when your zombie monster battles an opponent's monster, so not just vampires, but all zombies, during damage calculation, as a quick effect, you can pay life points in multiples of 100, max of 3,000. That monster you control gains that much attack and defense during that damage calculation only, and it shares the same special summon effect as well. So it doesn't matter if you can only attack with the Scarlet you summon if you have a Fraulein. And then that's compounded even more by the fact that you don't have to special summon this card back off of him, you can just have this in hand. So one of the adding even more onto the ideal tournament play, you'll Shadow Vampire into a Scarlet into one of these guys or one of the other vampires at the end here, and then whenever you attack, you'll drop a Fraulein and go ahead and special. Or go ahead, destroy a monster and then special it back to your side of the field, and that gives you 5 monsters on your side of the field, turn 1, or turn 2 because you have to go second, including one of your opponent's monsters. So Shadow Vampire is just the facilitator of some very crazy combos in this deck, and it's what's really going to get your boards going and get you started, which is why it's the only higher level one that we're running at 3. Now from there we have 2 copies of Vampire Red Baron, and that's kind of more for his level and attack power than his effect. Now, once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, and then target one of the monsters you control and one monster your opponent controls and one other vampire monster you control. Switch control of both monsters in the same usual battle phase effect. That is more situational, but it does come in handy because the control doesn't return. So if there's something, say you don't have a Fraulein, there's something too big to swing over, you can just go ahead and use his effect to give them a Familiar or a Brood or any of your smaller zombies, take their big monster, swing over the small monster with this, and then special it back to your side of the field. So you kind of just pull a little switcheroo there and work it so that you get your monster back, but they don't get their monster back. And to finish off the bigger vampires, we have Vampire Crimson. If a monster you control would be destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect, you can pay 1,000 life points for each of those monsters instead, along with the usual effect. He's just in there as something to add on to an already established board. Again, if your opponent's playing cards you're worried about destruction-wise, or you know they have something, you can go ahead and ditch that instead of a Baron or one of these guys and special it back up for Scarlet. So even at 1, it's not that hard to get to with how well you can actually set up your grave. Next up, we have 3 copies of Vampire Brood and 2 copies of Vampire Familiar. Now these are very similar card effects, so I'll just read them and then tell the slight difference at the end. If this card is special summoned, you can pay 500 life points, add 1 Vampire Spell Trap card from your deck to your hand. Also, if this card is in the graveyard, you can send 1 Vampire card from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard, special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field, and it is a hard once per turn. And Familiar does the same thing but searches a monster instead. Now the reason I'm running Brood at 3 and Familiar at 2 is because we have a spell that actually gives us a double summon that's very important to the way that I play this deck and how I have it set up to run. Because if everything goes ideally, we will be able to tribute one of our opponent's monsters, and we really need Brood and our double summon spell to go through. So we really have to get to it, so we're running him at 3 and the spell at 3. And although that does seem like it could get cloggy, if you open one of them, say you already open the double summon, you can just search another spell off of him. You don't have to send him, you can send it Familiar and then search a monster from there. So it seems like it would get cloggy, but it's really just kind of a decision tree where those are the most important cards. So if we want as many ways to get to them, and then if we hard draw them because we're running so many, we can just go ahead and set up for some other things as well. But moving on from there, we have 3 copies of Solitaire, 2 copies of Unizombie, and 2 copies of Gozuki. Now those are your starter cards in the deck, and we'll explain the play and why those are kind of the starter cards in the deck at the end here, but I'm not going to go over those. I've done so many zombie deck profiles, we all know what those do, in addition to Mizuki. Only at 2, not at 3, just because a lot of times you're going to want to be foolishing these guys or another vampire just set up for Scarlet, rather than foolishing a Mizuki, and he's more of a turn 2 or 3 play. Once you've already set up your board and you're looking to recover, you can go ahead and use him, so I like him at 2. Now we have Vampire Desire. You can only activate 1 Vampire Desire per turn, and you can only use one of the 2 effects it has per turn, but you can activate one of these effects. Target 1 face-up monster you control, send 1 vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard whose level is different from that monster, and if you do, that monster becomes the level of that monster sent to the graveyard until the end of this turn. Also, you can target 1 vampire monster in your graveyard, send 1 monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon that target. So this is a kind of more restricted Monster Reborn, in addition to a themed Foolish for the deck. Now we're only running this at 2 because it is very searchable off of Brood. We have many ways to get Brood into the graveyard. All of our starter cards actually go ahead and put him in the graveyard. We can go ahead and actually search this off of him, so it's really not necessary more than 2, and with 3 I was finding myself drawing it way too much and just having 2 copies of it in hand, and it's just a dead card that could be something else to help you win the game. It's very good, but again, it's highly searchable, so you only need the 2 copies of it. Now, we have 3 copies of Vampire Territory because, again, this is the double summon that's very important for our combo. Once per turn, you can pay 500 life points. During your main phase this turn, you can normal summon 1 vampire monster in addition to your normal summon or set. If your vampire monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, gain that much life points. Now the secondary effect is just nice. You will kind of get very low in this deck with Fraulein and paying off of some other cards, so this actually is a very nice bonus and it lets you swing over essentially anything because you can just max out your attack with Fraulein, swing over something, and you gain back most of what you did to them, and they take a lot more damage. But the double summon is super important for the main combo of the deck, which I'll go over now. So to do this, you'll need to open one of your starter cards, so Unizombie, Solitaire, Gozuki, preferably Gozuki just because he can special from the hand, and 2 vampire cards in hand, preferably 2 monsters. So with just those 3 cards, you can go ahead and normal summon the Gozuki, send a copy of Brood to the graveyard, go ahead and use Brood effects, discarding one of those vampires, preferably a monster, to the graveyard, to go ahead and special summon back the Brood. He'll grab you the double summon card, which you can activate that. You can then normal summon one of the, or actually before that, you can go into Vampire Sucker. If you have not Vampire World, if you have Zombie World, you can tribute one of your opponent's monsters. If not, you can special summon one of their monsters back, and then go ahead and tribute summon over one of their monsters, ending you on a Sucker. and a vampire monster, which if it's a vampire shadow, then you can go ahead and special summon a Scarlet from deck, go ahead and special back the one you sent to the grave, and the 5th card in your hand could be a Farlow, and then you can special that, take one of their monsters, and you have the board win over at the beginning, in addition to a Vampire Sucker, which from there will let you go into Decode Talker, into the new Vampire XYZ, into Adris, and it opens a lot of doors there. So the reason why I'm playing this at a max copy in Zombie World as well is just for that combo where you can tribute someone over your opponent's monsters. That lets you tribute someone over one. At that point, you'll have enough resources to make an all deer or all damp. I have no idea how to say that. You'll have enough resources to make a Vampire Sheridan or an Adrius or a Braum, so you can go ahead and out another card from there. And then you can go ahead and make a Decode Talker. You might even be able to search the counter trap. It seems like it's a lot of setup. It seems like there's too much to do. But just being able to open, say you open this instead, you don't have to search it, then you can grab the counter trap and have something for opponent's turn. Say you open this and the counter trap, and you don't need to search any spells, you can go ahead and send Familiar to grab a Vampire Shadow. So there's a lot of kind of decisions you have to make on your first turn to know what setup you need, know what setup is going to help you out of your opponent's board, and progress from there. We also have one copy of Monster Reborn and one copy of Foolish Burial, just because they're both very good cards there. 2 copies of Allure. I cut it down from 3 just to squeeze some extra cards in here. The copies of Zombie World, which again is essentially just a tribute over our opponent's monsters. It does come in handy in some niche matchups, but it's mostly just to help us out our opponent's cards. It also means anytime anything special from the graveyard will get the effect of Vampire Sucker off the draw. It lets us attack if we go into an Omega or a Borlord or something after resolving Unizombie's effect, so it has its uses, but again, mostly just for the tribute summon, and 2 copies of Vampire Domination. When a spell/trap card or monster effect is activated while you control a vampire monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then if the destroyed card was a monster, gain life points equal to its original attack, and it's a hard once per turn. The extract is nothing special really. We have one Charge Warrior just because we have the 5 copies of Unizombie up here, so if we send a Brood with a Unizombie, it'll be a level 6, so we can actually draw a card from there and then tribute someone over the Charge Warrior if we have to. That could come up if you just desperately need another card or something, you're digging for something. 1 copy of Omega and 1 copy of Shogun Saga. I could run Beals, but I actually like the boosted attack of Shogun Saga more, especially in this deck because you will have a lot of, 2k at least monsters in the graveyard, or, 1700 in this case, as well as you can go ahead and boost him up to, 5k attack very easily and push over a lot of things from there and just help push for game, and Omega's just Omega. 1 copy of Vampire Sucker, which I guess I'll go ahead and read this as well since it's still kind of new. It requires 2 zombie monsters. If you would tribute a monster for a tribute summon, you can tribute a zombie monster your opponent controls as if you controlled it, and each of these next effects are hard once per turn. You can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your opponent's field and defense position, and if you do, it is treated as a zombie monster. Also, if a zombie monster is special summoned from the graveyard, draw 1 card. So if we have Zombie World up, we don't even have to special summon something back to our opponent's side of the field. We can just go ahead and actually make this and then tribute summon over something our opponent controls. I kind of would like to run this at more than 1 just because there have been times I wanted more of them. But if that ever does come up, Mizuki is readily available to be sent to the grave, so you can usually go ahead and just reborn her and then tribute summon something from there. 1 Akashic, 1 Decode, and 1 Borlord. Very small amount of links, just as many that we need. Occasionally I'd like more, but 90% of the time this is enough for our purposes. From there we have Volk, Adris, and Crimson Knight Vampire Braum. For our 6s we have Strike Balancer, Utopia Beyond, and 1 copy of Gaia Dragon, just because we can make it over any of our monsters here. And 2 copies of All Vampire Sheridan. I probably butchered that, but this requires 2+ level 6 monsters. You'll see why that's relevant in a second here. If you XYZ summon this card by using a monster that is owned by your opponent as XYZ material, that monster's level is treated as 6. So this means that if you swing over anything with a copy of Vampire Scarlet or Vampire Red Baron up here, you can go ahead and just straight up overlay those 2 cards into this one. Once per turn, you can detach 1 XYZ material from this card, then target 1 card your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. So it does target, but it does not destroy, which is nice. Also, once per turn, if a monster on the field is sent to your opponent's graveyard by a card effect, or is destroyed by battle and sent to your opponent's graveyard, you can detach one XYZ material from this card, special summon one of that monsters to your field in defense position. Now that's why the 2+ is very important, because say you make this with just 2 monsters, you go ahead and send one of your opponent's monsters to the graveyard and special summon it back, he's already out of materials. So making him with 3 is generally more ideal, because then on your next turn you can still send something to the graveyard. So he's a very good card, but is hampered by the fact that both of his effects require a detach. But it's zombies, so what would you expect? Anyway, that's enough rambling about this deck. I've probably talked for a while here. Yes, I have. Some of it's going to get cut out, but I've talked for a while. I could talk all day about vampires and zombie decks, let's be honest. But let's go ahead and get into some replays here. You know, after that Cubic shit, I'm not surprised. But yes, this is one against Cubics, and this is actually kind of going to show that this hand doesn't look, you know, super great. We have our starters, we have a Familiar and Brood in hand, but we kind of want to get those engraved. But this one actually kind of shows how easy it is to actually get those engraved, especially opening a copy of Unizombie and both of those. So we'll go ahead and do some Cubic things, I guess. We'll do and send some seeds, and I don't know, try to put a seed in me and stuff, whatever. So we'll go ahead, he won't really have anything to disrupt us, he'll have the Ogre and the MST, which he uses at the completely wrong time, by the way. But we'll just go ahead and Solitaire into Unizombie, and now, here's where things get interesting. So we'll send one from deck to grave, he'll Ogre that, so that'll actually change what we send, but we have both of these guys in hand, and we have a way to discard them, we have a way to discard this, and we already have Shadow Vampire. So we're actually set up very well now. Since he Ogred that, just to get the body back on field, I'll actually send Mizuki, go ahead and bring Unizombie back. He'll just gain some attack or whatever. So Unizombie will activate, we can go ahead and discard Brood. Brood will discard Familiar to special, Brood will search us the territory we need, Familiar will discard the Vampire Red Baron, which we're going to grave set up, so we can go ahead and search the Frowler that we need, go ahead and special Sucker, special one back to his side of the field. So the only piece of the combo we were really missing was Zombie World. He'll hit that after we summon, I don't know why. Shadow will special into Scarlet, Scarlet will special into Red Baron, and we can special Frilline as well. So if we would have had Zombie World, this would have been the ideal sense of the combo. And main phase 2 will just make Deco Talker, because I don't want to send that Cubic Karma to grave, so we'll just kind of leave a lot of bodies on the field for him to get over. But yes, that was probably the best showcase of this deck, really going off with its best starter play. Another duel with some questionable choices here. Now we're up against Gladbeast, and he's playing Ash Blossom, which is pretty good. He's, you know, could be generally trying to play as meta as he could of Gladbeasts. But he also has Andal in there, and that's why maybe he has Unexpected. Okay, yeah, he must run Unexpected Die, and oh, he runs. Okay, he still runs 3 copies, so they're still live. Okay, I don't think I'd run 3, but I do like the Rescue Rabbit. Maybe it was in there, because then you could special summon the Link off of just a Rescue Rabbit and special 2. Okay, yeah, he does have. Okay, that's actually pretty cheeky. Yeah, I like that. So not questionable choices, actually. It was actually very good choices, it seems like. But why did it swap back? Anyway, he's going first, so he'll just kind of set Andal pass. Really nothing else he can do. And we'll go ahead and kind of do our main combo here, except that's going to get hit with the Ash Blossom. So we can't go off exactly like we'd want to. So we'll just go ahead and send to Sheridan, Sucker. We'll go ahead and special back. Okay, so what happened here? Since he Ash Blossomed the effect of the Brood, and we can't tribute summon for the Vampire Sheridan, or the Vampire Scarlet, we're actually going to go ahead and bring it back from the grave off of Mizuki. So we'll go ahead and use Gozuki with that to go ahead and special Sucker. Sucker will special Mizuki from hand. Then we can go to Deco Talker, and then we can use the Mizuki to special back the Scarlet from grave. And then we can go ahead and just special back the Vampire Sucker from there. So we were still able to get him onto the field. Main phase 2 will bring back Andal. And he doesn't really have anything for us to out, so we'll just kind of leave it on the field from there. Now here he'll start kind of doing his thing, special Augustus, Bestiary. I could have negated the Bestiary, stopping him from going into the Link, but I was kind of waiting for a Gazaris to be summoned, which he actually is going to go for, even though I have the Decode, interestingly. So go ahead, that's going to get negated. The special out the Gazaris, we'll go ahead and obviously negate that, which should be the Scarlet, but we have a Shadow in hand, so it doesn't really matter. And it's back over to us, and we got the territory, so it's just kind of time to go off, basically. We'll get Shadow into Scarlet, into Vampire Sucker, activate territory, use Sucker to special back the Andal, go ahead and tribute summon over that whenever we top deck the Zombie World. And then main phase, we'll go ahead and swing over that, even though it's the only one we can attack with. Main phase 2, we can just go ahead and steal it, and we'll go into board load and Photon Strike Bouncer. He's going to go to Onslaught and kind of try to keep going for the Link, but there's just really not much he can do. Again, we have the Photon Strike Bouncer, so we can just negate with that, and there's really no coming back for him now that he has no cards in hand and no cards on field. So, again, just some of the power of Vampires there. It's extraordinarily easy to actually put enough monsters on field your second turn. I mean, that's true of almost any good deck, but especially whereas Vampires used to be like you blew all your load on turn 1, this deck actually does have some pretty decent recovery and can go ahead and spit out some pretty decent boards on its second turn in operation. Now, this next one is basically the Vampire Grimson show because he's really going to be the star of what happens in this one. So we'll just go ahead and roll it. He has a Lost Wind, TT, and Imperial Order, so he has some decent back row set there. We'll go ahead, Solitaire into Unizombie. That's going to go ahead and get hit with a Lost Wind, so we can't search our double summon, so we can't get our setup off from there. So we'll just swing for a little bit and let him go from there. And he's going to draw a Fossil Dyna, so fun times today. Yay. So at this point, it's not looking good for us. But we top deck Brood, which is exactly 1200, which will let us actually crash with that. Then we can special that back, go ahead and grab the double summon, activate Zombie World, go ahead, tribute summon over that. Scarlet will special back the Grimson. I'll try to torrential tribute, but we have Grimson, so we can pay 2000 to negate that. And we're set up from there. He'll Dark Hole. Once again, we'll pay 2000 with Grimson. It'll come back to us, and now I'm playing around Torrential, so I'm not going to activate Faralorn or summon anything else, just because, again, I'm worried about another Torrential Tribute possibly being set. We activated Order, he drew Duality, he has Monster Reborn, so there's nothing he can do because he locked himself out there, and we just had game on board for next turn. This next one is a showcase of what Vampires can do, but is also a showcase of some subpar True Draco play as well. So we'll go ahead and just start rolling it, and I'll kind of point out the mistake at the end here. So we'll go ahead and use Majesty Maiden. Now, here's what's weird. Now, he has an anti-spell. He doesn't have a trap, so he can't actually tribute someone on our turn. Now, off of the diagram, he actually goes ahead and searches Masterpiece. However, if he had actually searched one of the trap cards to go ahead and tribute summon, he could have searched a Masterpiece off of Majesty Maiden and actually had a better board from there. So I don't know why he actually didn't search a trap instead of the Masterpiece and then search the Masterpiece on our turn. But we'll go ahead and play into his board as if he could summon it, basically, which is kind of just blindly playing into it. He'll anti-spell, so it's fun times today, so we'll kind of have to try and work around that with Fraulein here. We also have to work around the double attack. What's it called? The fucking diagrams battle protection. We'll have to play around that as well. So go ahead and use Unizombie, set up a Familiar for next turn. And we're going to go ahead and just out the Majesty Maiden with a Fraulein here. So we'll pay just enough to get over it with both of our monsters so that he won't have a monster to tribute someone over on his next turn. And the frame rate is seriously shitting itself. Let's see if we can get that back. Okay, now that's back. We'll go ahead and make a Decode Talker, just because Masterpiece has to target, and we'll special stuff back into both its zones with the Counter Trap live. We will go ahead and drop the Masterpiece, but at this point, it's unaffected by Spell and Trap, so I don't know why he targeted the Decode Talker. He could have just, like Battle Phase, swung over one and then waited and tried to pop it later, but he'll go to pop it and we can hit it with the one thing it's affected by. So I don't know what was going through his head there. And from here, it's just kind of like, he'll tribute someone with a Ignis, yeah, and again, he won't be able to swing over anything, so he just kind of has a monster on board. We'll top deck a Scarlet that was pretty good, which will let us special back the Fraulein that we just tributed for it. And we can go ahead and once again swing over it twice using Fraulein's effect to out any monster he has on board as well. And then from there we can go ahead into Vampire Sheridan and out the diagram as well so that he can't keep searching anything that he wants. So pretty strong play there. Again, he's going to keep shuffling stuff back, drawing cards. I believe he has, now he has stuff. He could tribute for the Masterpiece. I don't know why. Again, there was no tribute summon for the Masterpiece. we'll just go ahead and start swinging to gain some life points back off the territory there, even with Fraulein. And phase 2, we'll use Brood. We'll go ahead, special that back, start another counter trap, so we're set up, even more. Again, he has 2 Masterpieces in hand. He doesn't summon them. I don't know why he wasn't at least trying to summon them here and just doing anything. But he just, I guess, kind of quit at the end there. But we still went kind of against Draco, just not piloted well. And I mean, yeah, vampires. But anyway, that will do it for our look at new vampires. I will most certainly be building this when it comes out. I'll go ahead, I'll pick back up the secret shadow vampires. I have zombie stuff in max rarity already, so I have all the other stuff for this. I will be ready to grab this stuff once it comes out and build it there. Hopefully we'll get Vampire Sucker at the same time that we get the rest of the cards. Let's put it on here. Let's put it on here. There we go. But yes, very fun. Actually decently good. It dies to a lot of hand traps like Ash or Ogre. Actually, it doesn't die to Ogre, but it dies to Ash fairly easily. Sadly, one strike can hit your starter card and kind of mess you up from there. And there's just not really many ways to counteract that. To still at its heart, a deck that needs at least one tribute summon to go off. And if they just stop you from getting to that point and getting the resources you need to make that summon, getting your monster off the field through a strike or something like that, there's just not much you can do from there. But if it does go off, it can make some very strong and very powerful plays and can surprise you here and there. Plus, just Fraulein being able to swing over anything is amazing. Overlaying with your opponent's monsters is a cool mechanic, and they kind of reworked vampires to be what it feels more like they should be, where they're kind of, especially through the use of territory, sucking life from your opponent. But anyway, usual plug at the end of the episodes. Link to my Twitter down in the description, where I'll put out some random thoughts about Yu-Gi-Oh! And tweet whenever new videos come out. My Discord as well, where we'll kind of chill, hang out, talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, other things, whatever catches our fancy, but mostly Yu-Gi-Oh! And a link to my Patreon as well, where you'll actually find some extra replays that didn't make it into the final cut of this video. Now, extra replays are just stuff that I have lying around anyway, because I'd like to get more than I need. So those will be up there, but no usual content or anything will ever be gated off. Just watching is enough for me, and you're all awesome. But if you appreciate the work and effort that I put into these videos and want to support me and have a little extra to give, it would be greatly appreciated. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.